Alright, everybody. Welcome to Who is Like God, and this time we're going to be examining a rabbinical argument for the destruction of the Second Temple. Now, the reason this is significant is if you all remember, about a month ago or so, I made a video about the temple and sort of going into why it was destroyed and why, from the Christian perspective, the perspective of a follower of the way, it was because that generation had rejected the Messiah. Now, there's actually a lot more that can be said, and this comes full circle. So first, I gotta give credit to Sam Shamoon and his channel, The Archive. Obviously, I believe that all this information comes from God, but this is the first time I actually encountered this about a month or so ago, and it really made me think. So I wanted to just make a video about this for a little while now. Now, if we get into Rabbinic Judaism, it is a form of modern Judaism where they uphold the Old Testament, they reject Jesus or Yeshua as the Messiah, and one of the most important, if not the most important, religious text for day-to-day life is the Talmud. Now, in Yoma 9b, it talks about how the two temples in ancient Israel, that portion of Israel's history, why they were destroyed. And it actually gives a little bit of reasoning as to why. So you go to this, and I read it myself in the Talmud. I'll link that in the description. Why was the first temple destroyed? Because of three things which prevailed there: idolatry, immorality, bloodshed. But why was the second temple destroyed? Seeing that in its time they occupied themselves with Torah, mitzvot, and acts of kindness. Because baseless hatred prevailed. This teaches you that baseless hatred is equal to the three sins of idolatry, illicit relations, and murder. It's called Sanat Shanam, assuming I'm pronouncing that right. And that's crazy because this is a rabbinic argument that dives into why exactly was the temple destroyed. Because it's true, after the exile, Israelites mainstream really weren't having a problem with idolatry in the biblical text. I mean, those, especially those exiles who had returned to Judea, right? But the fact is, the temple is still destroyed. So it's not because of idolatry. Why is it? The main rabbinic reason, rabbinic Judaism's answer, is because of baseless hatred. Now here's where it gets interesting. John 15. You remember this passage about the hatred of the world? About the passage where Jesus says, "I am the true vine," and things like that. You're gonna look in this passage in a whole new light. I pray. This is Jesus talking to his disciples. He says, "If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you." This is the ESV, by the way. "If you were of the world would love you as its own, but because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you." Skip down to verse 22. "If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not have been guilty of sin, but now they have no excuse for their sin. Whoever hates me hates my Father also." So basically, those who are witnesses to Jesus are now accountable to the revelation that God has given, right? "If I had not done among them the works that no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. But now they have seen and hated both me and my Father." Here's the kicker, verse 25. "But the word that is written in their law must be fulfilled. They hated me without a cause." What's that? Baseless hatred. Baseless hatred. Now let's compare to Luke 19, verses 42 to 44, because why is that significant? This is Jesus in the Gospel of Luke when he's lamenting over Jerusalem, saying, "Would that you, even you, had known on this day the things that make for peace, but now they are hidden from your eyes. For the days will come upon you when your enemies will set up a barricade around you and surround you and hem you in on every side and tear you down to the ground, you and your children within you. And they will not leave one stone upon another in you, because you did not know the time of your visitation." So in this passage, Jesus is predicting the destruction of the temple, this famous revolutionary event that would happen in the year AD 70, about 4 decades after Christ was crucified. Why is this so important? Because the same argument that the rabbis are making, Jesus is making before they even made it. He's just applying it to himself. See? Because a lot of rabbis will say, and this is, for example, Tovia Singer's position, that this temple was destroyed not because of the rejection of Christ, but because of the baseless hatred going on in that generation. Jesus would agree with you. That's the crazy thing. Jesus is essentially making this rabbinic argument before the rabbis even did. The difference is he applies it to himself. You know what I'm saying? And the result of that hatred that was going among other Jews, as the rabbis would say, which Jesus says, I'm included in that hatred. The result of that is the destruction of the temple. So y'all see where I'm going with this. And yeah, it's crazy because it comes full circle. All right, so what's the takeaway? We have opinions from two different theological camps, or two entirely different religious camps by today's standards, that are essentially agreeing on the same thing. Now, this invites you to look deeper if you're curious about the way or about Jesus, and to look into these things, to the destruction of the temple and the reasons why, and the fact that Jesus essentially makes the same argument and applies it to himself. Now we got to look at Jesus and his claims that he made, his messianic claims. Was he really the Messiah sent to Israel? Understand, the apostles were not trying to start a new religion, right? That's what we think, but that's imposing modern language and modern distinctions on ancient people. Because that implies they're trying to start a whole new belief system. Nah. They believe Jesus had came, he died, he resurrected in fulfillment of the scriptures. 1 Corinthians 15, this goes back way to the original apostles. They see this as being the God of Israel's plan for the exiles and for the nations, right? Fulfillment of the Old Testament, not throwing it away. So if you're curious, whatever you may already believe, I just invite you to look into these things. Examine some of the other stuff on my channel. I'm all for putting all these things under scrutiny. Like I've said before, I'm convinced when you do, Jesus and God and the biblical faith will come out on top. And I praise God for that. So I just want to make this quick video because this blew my mind when I first found it. I want to say it's about a month ago. And ever since then, I've been meaning to make a quick little video where I address it. And I pray it'll bless your lives. And maybe when you're talking with other people about religious things or the root of these things, ancient Israel and such, you can bring this up, giving them something to think about. So y'all stay blessed in the Messiah. I'll see you in the next one.